Okay, properties of numbers. This is a combination of lessons 1.3 and 1.4 from the textbook, but we're going to start with IXL skill H1, and these are properties that you'll see in H1. The first four, I don't think you're going to see these, but we'll just talk about them. The reflexive property of equality, first of all, says that any quantity equals itself. So that seems like a no-brainer. It's called the reflexive property. The symmetric property is the property that says you can flip-flop the two sides of an equation. So for example, if you have 5 plus 2 equals 7, then of course you can say 7 equals 5 plus 2. If you have 2x plus 3 equals y, you can flip-flop the two sides and say y equals 2x plus 3. So that's the symmetric property of equality. The transitive property of equality is the if and then property. If A is equal to B, all right, and B is equal to C, then what does A have to be equal to? Well, it's got to be equal to C. If A is equal to B and C was equal to B, then A is equal to C. All right, substitution property, we use this all the time without thinking. And this is what we do. Any quantity may be substituted for its equal in any expression. So if you see a 5 plus 2, you can substitute a 7 in its place. All right, next property, identity property of addition. Okay, 0 is the identity for addition. It's the fact that you can add 0 and nothing changes, right? So if I have 2 plus 0, it's still going to equal 2. And if I have x plus 0, it's still going to equal x, all right? The additive inverse property, the inverse property of addition, says that if you have opposites, then the sum of a number and its opposites is always 0. So as an example here, 2 plus negative 2 is 0, right? Well, same thing would be true if you have 2x plus negative 2x. All right, that would add up to 0. If you have something plus the opposite of that same thing, then the sum is going to be 0. All right, the identity property for multiplication is 1. 1 is the multiplicative identity. You can multiply by 1 and nothing changes. So, examples here. Obviously, 1 times 2 is, or let's put 2 times 1. 2 times 1? Well, we'll do 1 times 2. 1 times 2 is still 2. If you have 1 times x, it's still x. All right, the multiplicative property of 0, the 0 property of multiplication, says that if you multiply by 0, the product is always 0. You know that, all right? 2 times 0 is 0. Same deal with x times 0 would be 0. Anything times 0 is 0. All right, the multiplicative inverse property is kind of the reciprocal property. It says the product of a number and its reciprocal is always 1. So do you remember what a reciprocal is? Let me give you an example here. The number 2, okay, the reciprocal of the number 2, if we think of 2 as a fraction by writing it 2 over 1, then the reciprocal is 1 over 2. And if you multiply 2 over 1 by 1 over 2, okay, what you get is 2 times 1 is 2, and then 1 times 2 is 2, and so this is going to equal 1. All right, it's always true. If you take 2/3 and you multiply it by its reciprocal, by 3/2. All right, that's going to equal 6 over 6, which is 1. All right, so anytime you multiply a number by its reciprocal, the product is 1. The multiplicative inverse property. Okay, the final two properties, 3 properties, are the ones we use probably the most. The commutative properties, okay, there's a property for addition and a property for multiplication. They say that the order in which you add or multiply, okay, when you add or multiply numbers, the order does not change the sum or product. okay? In other words, I can rearrange terms and factors. When I'm adding several numbers or multiplying several numbers, the order doesn't matter. Okay? The associative properties are like your associates. It's like the group. It has to do with grouping. The associative property says that the way that you group 3 or more numbers when you add or multiply does not change the sum or product. So I like to say it this way. I can use parentheses to regroup. Can use parentheses to regroup terms and factors. All right. Let's see here. And then the distributive property, I can rainbow multiply a factor by a sum or difference to eliminate parentheses. So you've used the distributive property before. What I'll show you with numbers as an example here. Let's do 2 times 3 plus 4. All right. We know that's 2 times 7, so the answer is 14. But the distributive property says we can do this. We can distribute 2 times 3. And then distribute 2 times the 4. So we have 2 times 3 plus 2 times 4, which gives us 6 plus 8, which is still 14. The distributive property is this rainbow multiply property. Okay, so have this page handy as you are looking at IXL skill H1. And again, a lot of these commutative versus associative property, these will come up a lot. But the commutative property says that if you add two numbers, whether it's x plus y, you can rearrange those and make it y plus x. All right? Whereas the associative property is going to involve 3 values. If you have x plus y plus z, all right, and you've grouped the x plus the y, that you can regroup those and make it x plus y plus z. So that would be an example of the associative property that says you can use parentheses to regroup things. So give H1 a try.